Can you hear us now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Scarlock, we're going to take some testimony from you in this matter, so we'll need to have you raise your right hand and be sworn in, then we'll proceed.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Storm, when you're ready.
Thank you. Could you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Alicia Skurlock. It's Scurlock.
Thank you. And you're familiar with the parties Porter Ward, Danielle Newburn, and their son Demetrius?
I am.
And how do you know them?
Porter is my boyfriend and Demetrius is his son.
Okay. And how long have you known them?
Porter and I have been dating since end of May, beginning of June of 2022.
Okay. And you and Porter live together?
I didn't hear that. Sorry, what was that?
That's okay. You and Porter live together?
Yes, we do. Since the end of July of 2022.
And do you have any children of your own?
I do.
What is her name?
Coralina, she's 9.
And how does she and Demetrius get along?
They get along great.
How do
They play together. Oftentimes they will sit and watch movies together. Coralina tends to twirl his hair while they sit and watch shows. They play school together. They like to play soccer together. Most of the time, if we don't have one, the other one is missing the other one.
Okay. And how often do you have your daughter?
I have my daughter all the time. I have full custody of my daughter.
Okay. No parenting time with father?
No.
Okay.
No.
And so to confirm, is it just you, Porter, Demetrius, and Coralina living together?
Yes.
And in your current residence, how long have you lived there?
I have lived there for about 3 years now.
All right. And is that the home? So you and Porter moved in together in July of 2022. He moved in with you?
Yes.
Okay. So have the two of you ever lived anywhere else while you've been together?
No.
How many bedrooms in your residence?
3.
And does Demetrius have his own room?
Yes.
And do you, Porter, and the kids do activities together?
We do quite often.
Okay. When you say often, can you explain to the court what often means?
Well, we do activities on the weekdays, rather it, sometimes we'll do pumpkin carving or, we will take the kids to the park. We also do, if there's an event going on during the week, we'll take the kids. Oftentimes on the weekends, we try to do at least something, whether it be a museum or a movie night.
So on a weekly basis, this is occurring?
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's okay. On a weekly basis, this is occurring?
I wouldn't say weekly. Probably on the weekends, yes, we do stuff pretty much every weekend. On the weekdays, it's become more sporadic. We used to do things a lot more on the weekdays with both of the kids, but we haven't been able to lately.
Why haven't you been able to do the weekday activities you've done before?
During parenting restriction times that we've had with Demetrius, there hasn't been often enough time to plan something, or if we did have something planned, there's not enough time to actually be able to do it before either he's picked up or we have to drop him off.
And so just to make sure I'm understanding, it's the shortness of time between pickup and when Demetrius is picked up by his mom?
Yes.
Okay. Has Danielle ever been invited to join in any of these activities or special occasions with Demetrius?
When it's strictly pertaining to Demetrius, soccer, a recital, Christmas recital for him.
Okay. And we already discussed that. How would you describe the relationship between Demetrius and yourself?
Very well. He oftentimes is super excited when he gets out of school to tell me about how his day is with both the kids. We usually ask, what was their best part of the day? What was the worst? Did they make good choices? When I'm cooking, he will try to come up and want to help, or sometimes when the kids are playing, he will stop in the middle of playing and come up just to tell me that he loves me or gives me a hug.
And when he asks to cook with you, do you allow him to cook with you?
Yeah, certain things. It just depends, because for me, I'm very cautious with the kids and cooking, and I don't want them to get burnt. So if it's like pouring the noodles into water or stirring something, then yes. Or I don't know, not cutting something, but peeling vegetables or something, then yeah.
Basically, the kid-safe activities that don't involve
Yes.
sharp or hot things.
Yes.
Okay. And so how would you describe the relationship between Demetrius and Porter as you've observed it?
Very loving. He oftentimes uses Porter as a jungle gym, especially when we get home from school. Both the kids want to do, but the first thing he wants to do is climb all over him. He will oftentimes run up to him and tell him some story, whether the story makes sense or not. But he will, and he listens. He asked him to go play soccer with him, and he's outside playing soccer and kicking the ball around, and we have a playground in our backyard, so he goes out there with Demetrius. They cuddle and watch TV together. If he isn't feeling well, he tends to often want to curl up with him. If he needs help with something, he goes to him for it.
Okay. And I answered my next question, which is what does it look like when they're together? So let's switch to discussing
We're not, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you, Ms.
Sorry.
Storm, again.
Sorry about that. Just remind me and I'll make sure I'm leaning in close and directing my voice at the microphone. So I'm going to switch topics now to discuss Porter and Ms. Newburn's relationship. Have you been able to observe how the two of them communicate with each other or interact with each other in person?
Yes.
Okay. And when they're interacting in person, what does that look like?
In person is often very, I don't want to say short, but it's, it's pleasant. It's not like either of them are being rude to each other. There have been times where conversations haven't gone exactly the best, but most of the time in person, it's pretty well, but also most of the time Demetrius is around when they are around each other. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Have you been around when Danielle speaks to Porter over the phone?
Occasionally, yes.
Okay. And are you able to hear what Ms. Newburn is saying, or at least how she sounds during those calls?
Yes, I have.
All right. And how does that typically go? Again, just hearing about what you directly hear.
It depends on the conversation and the day, really. There's sometimes where, say a situation needs to change or a pickup or something like that. Sometimes it's very pleasant and she is understanding. And then there's other days where it is very short. The tone of the voice sounds very abrupt and rude.
And when this is going on, how does Porter sound?
Oftentimes he's even toned. I know that there has been times where, if she's yelling at him on the phone, he's had to raise his voice to get her attention.
From the times that you've observed, how often would you say she gets to the point where she's yelling at him on the phone?
In the beginning, I want to say there was probably maybe twice that happened where she was yelling at on the phone.
Okay. More recently, has that been occurring any recently? We'll say?
Conversations have been strictly through text message.
Okay.
I want to say probably 80% of the time. I think that has helped with some of the, I guess, yelling. I don't know.
That's okay. So does
Can't hear you, Ms. Storm.
So you indicated that Porter will sometimes raise his voice to try and redirect and get Ms. Newburn's attention. Other than that, how does Porter react when these types of disagreements are going on, either whether you're watching him from a phone call or watching him text with her?
If the conversation is going bad, and either he's trying to compromise her about something or trying to express his concerns, when he doesn't feel, he feels like it's just turning into an argument, he tends to shut it down, where I'm no longer going to have this conversation considering it's not going anywhere.
Okay. And how does this communication affect Porter after the communication ceases, if anything?
I mean, it affects him. It's frustration because of little things shouldn't be made as difficult as they get sometimes. So, I mean, there's frustration in the situation.
What sorts of little things are you talking about that have turned into bigger deals?
Haircuts, drop off times, trying to communicate about whether Demetrius should be signed up for something or not, expressing concerns of his to her about the shark necklace, you know.
And these concerns and issues that have popped up, how have they typically resolved from what you've been able to observe?
I don't know if I would technically say they've resolved. It's one of those things that he expresses his concern enough that he realizes it's not going anywhere, so he just drops it.
Have you ever been involved in the conversations between Porter and Donnie via text on like a three-way chat?
No.
Has Donnie ever contacted you via text or phone call?
Yes, she has.
Okay, if so, or say now that it's so, and do you, what does she reach out to you about, or how does that usually go?
Normally, it's not quite often that Donnie has reached out to me or texted me. Most of the time, it has either been something about Demetrius, whether asking how he's doing, if he was sick. I know there was one time that he left daycare because he wasn't feeling good, so I met up with her to pick him up. I wouldn't say too much phone calls, video calls, if because Porter doesn't have a video chat, but my phone does. So, she's been able to video chat on my phone to Demetrius.
Okay. Do you reach out to her via text, video call, or phone call?
Not unless she's already contacted me, no.
Okay. Has her mother ever contacted you via text or phone call?
Yes.
And if so, how often, what have been the circumstances of that?
So Donnie's mom, when Porter first filed papers to the court, Donnie's mom started video calling me every time we had Demetrius, which I answered and let her talk to him because it's neither here nor there. If you want to talk to your grandson, you can. It wasn't up until I got a text message from her mom, from Donnie's mom. The way that it came across to me, it was very threatening, as of if Porter didn't give Donnie Demetrius, that there was going to be issues.
When you say give Demetrius to Donnie, does she mean just like for a parenting time exchange that parties didn't agree on, or what was the circumstance that you, if you know, I should say?
It was a parenting time. It was a holiday weekend. That Donnie felt that she should have had. Porter and her didn't come to an agreement. I know that there was a time where he was willing to, but they weren't able to come to an agreement about switching certain days. And due to that, her mom reached out asking when she was to get Demetrius. And my response was, I think that you need to talk to Donnie. This isn't, this has nothing to do with me. This is between Donnie and Porter.
Okay. Do you typically get involved or communicate with Donnie about decision-making things with Demetrius?
No.
I'm going to ask you to remember back to October 15th of 2022, what I'm referring to as a soccer game incident. Do you remember October 15th of 2022, at least some?
Yes, I do.
Okay, were you there that day?
Yes, I was.
Okay. What did you observe that day, starting laying the groundwork, because we already have testimony? Child was sick, Porter notified grandma. What
I'm
happened
gonna
at that
object to
point?
leading.
I'm sorry, I was just cutting to the point where I wanted her to talk about, Your Honor.
Well, you can qualify it, that's fine.
I can always rephrase if the court would prefer, / if Ms. Ives would
No,
prefer.
go ahead, rephrase.
Okay, I'll rephrase. Thank you. During that day, are you aware of why Demetrius didn't go to soccer that day?
Yes. So during that day, with him being sick and the weather being crappy like it was, Porter didn't feel that it was best for him to go to soccer. He notified Donnie's mom. He forgot his phone in the car, which is not the first time. It's happened before, but rarely, but he did. I did have my phone on me. I didn't receive a phone call from Donnie that day. But Porter did receive multiple phone calls and text messages. I recall him telling me that he forgot his phone in the car and was like, oh crap, I forgot my phone in my car, or in the car. I need to go get it. When he went to go grab his phone and seen everything and listened to the voicemails, and it was one of those like, here we go moments.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you just so that we don't have narrative testimony, and I'm going to redirect with another question. So how long, to your memory, was the phone in the car?
It had to be like 30 to 45 minutes. It was not very long.
So less than an hour for sure?
Yeah.
Okay. And You had your phone on you that entire day?
Yes, I did.
Did you receive any phone calls from Donnie or her family members?
No, I did not.
Okay. We got inside, you saw the missed messages, then what happened from your perspective of what you directly observed?
Um, there were threats to kick our door in, which I was extremely concerned about because not only do we have both the kids there, mine and hers, so I was concerned as of what was really going to happen.
Could you
Porter
hear,
did call.
did he get in touch with her over the phone?
Yes, he did. He did call her.
Could you hear her side of the conversation or just Porter's?
I could hear both. It was on speakerphone.
Okay, and so what was the tone of voice of Danielle during that time?
She was very hysterical, yelling, screaming at him. That was when I referred to him having to raise his voice. That was the time that he had to raise his voice because there was no way to get her to even hear him when he was trying to talk because she was consistently yelling and screaming at him.
Okay. Do you know how long that phone call went on?
Maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe.
Okay. Going to next ask about October 17th for the exchange when Porter needed to take Demetrius to Danielle. Do you remember that day?
Yes, I do.
All right. What happened that day from your memory?
It was late in the evening and Donnie asked Porter to drop Demetrius off at a hotel, which we both thought was really odd because it wasn't a normal occurrence. And Porter was concerned and was later told that the reasoning was because she had fleas, but this was after a lengthy time of trying to get her to let him know what was going on, as he was willing to keep Demetrius if it was something that needed to happen. At that time, she was unwilling to do so. And it was the reasoning was because she said that she needed her time with her son because she was about to give up.
Okay. And she had ended up having Demetrius that night, correct?
Yes, we didn't find out. I mean, we had already dropped Demetrius off during the conversation Porter and Donnie had.
Okay. So then we're going to move on to 2 more days later on October 19th, 2022. Do you remember that evening?
I do.
All right. What happened? Were you there when Porter was contacted by Donnie or Donnie's family?
Yes, we were sitting on the couch. It was, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We were sitting on the couch watching TV. The kids were already in bed. And Porter received a phone call from Donnie's mom, which we thought was odd because rarely did Donnie's mom ever call him. She always texted him. So we thought it was odd. So when he answered and she told him what was going on with Donnie, and requested that he helped. But he never received a phone call from Donnie that night, nor did I.
Okay. And in addition to Donnie's mom, her uncle called, correct?
Yes, he did. He said that he was hunting, so he couldn't do it and wanted Porter to help.
Were you there when Zach was at Porter's house during the prior to picking up Danielle?
Oh, he called him.
Oh, he called him. Okay. And were you there when Zach talked with Porter about what happened during the ride?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And you were able to hear the phone calls clearly when you were there?
The phone calls between Zach and,
Zach and Porter.
so I want to say that was in person, after Donnie's vehicle got sent to, oh, I can't think of what it's called, where you take vehicles, tow truck place. And Zach was telling, Porter what transpired, during that time. But yes, I was able to hear their conversation.
Okay. I'm going to talk now about Christmas of 2022. Did Porter get the parenting time during that Christmas time as was regular, the regular parenting time schedule the parties had been following?
As far as I understand, there was no actual schedule for holidays during 2022. The conversation was that Donnie was going to get or Thanksgiving and that Porter would get Christmas, but that Porter, Donnie and Porter were still going to do like an early pickup. They never agreed on a pickup time though.
And did Porter get denied any parenting time during this time, or was Demetrius withheld at all?
Yes, after Donnie picked Demetrius up on Christmas Day of 2022, we did not see Demetrius again until I want to say it was January 5th. I want to say it was the following that Thursday. She told Porter that for him to start court proceedings and that she was going to be the one getting him.
Okay, so you said that Donnie told Porter about something about starting with court?
Yes, Christmas of 2022, after she got Demetrius, she told Porter to file some court paperwork that she wanted to start custody, something, but none of that was ever followed through.
Okay. So to your now, obviously Porter didn't file at that time?
No, because once Donnie actually gave Demetrius back, they started getting along until February, and then February he was withheld from him again. So no, he didn't file then though.
How long was Demetrius withheld in February of 2023?
Uh, I want to say 4 days, maybe 5.
Do you have notes regarding parenting time that Porter exercised during 2023?
Don't right now.
One moment, Your Honor. Just for the purpose of the record, with permission, I would like to, Ms. Ives, I'm referring to what would have been Plaintiff's Exhibit 8. I'd like to use that to refresh my witness's memory.
Ms. Ives, any response?
Well, I have no objection if she's using it to refresh her memory.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. I will be just 2 seconds to run out to the next conference room to give it to her. Ms. Gerlach, if you could take a look at Exhibit 8, and when you have had a chance to refresh your memory, let me know.
Okay,
All right, so how many days in February were ultimately withheld?
4 days.
Okay. And was the incident in October the only time that Donnie has threatened to either go to your home or kick in the door?
No.
Do you know when another time was?
Uh, Porter did not answer his phone quick enough. It was in I want to say it was in May. No, sorry. It was in August, I want to say, of 2023. She texted Porter, he didn't respond quick enough. And she basically told him that he doesn't want her to start acting crazy and she will, and he needs to respond to her.
Has Donnie ever included anybody else in her threats, saying that somebody else will come to Porter's house and either break in the door or other physical acts?
She has threatened to send her mom to come get Demetrius. I want to say during the I can't remember the exact incident right now, but she demanded that if we didn't give her Demetrius, even though it was his parenting time, that she was going to send her mom over to pick him up. I know that in September, it was like end of August, September, for that holiday weekend, she also was trying to send her mother over to get Demetrius, even after Porter and her already had the conversation that he was unwilling to give up the little bit of parenting time that he was getting because of all the time that she was withholding from him.
And I'm going to switch gears here. Have you seen Ms. Newburn's Facebook?
Yes.
Are you friends with her or have ability to view what's on her page?
I'm not friends with her, but Porter has shown me posts prior.
Okay. The posts that you've seen, does anything stand out about those?
Most of them are father bashing. The one that spoke out or stood out to me, where she posted about wishing that she could mace her baby daddy, or she should have maced her baby daddy when she had the chance, but that the judge wouldn't be too happy about it. That's just one example of the many that I've seen. And then there is a lot of mental health posts that could be concerning, knowing the issues that she fights with.
And have you ever seen any disclaimers or caveats saying, this isn't my life, don't worry, this isn't me, or not, this isn't pertaining to my current situation?
The only time I've ever seen that is just recently, since we've been in court. Other than that, no, there's not been any disclaimers at all.
Okay. And I'm going to switch topics again. Do you FaceTime with Demetrius at all while he's at his mother's house?
I do.
And when you do, is Ms. Newburn there?
Depending on, so he will sometimes FaceTime both of us, me and Porter, on Sundays when we drop him off. he'll FaceTime us then, which Donnie has been there. There's other times where Donnie was at work and he's FaceTimed me.
Okay. And during those times, do you know who's watching him, if you know?
The only person that I seen most of the time was his grandmother, which again was who we were told was watching him. There was one time that I seen the Trevor, her cousin, but that wasn't until later in the afternoon did I see him when he video called me.
Okay. During exchanges, when you've during pickups and drop-offs times, have you ever smelled marijuana in Donnie's vehicle?
I have.
How often have you smelled that?
Um, most of the time when she's picking him up, would be the times that I could smell the marijuana in there. I would say in on a weekly basis, at least 2 times a week.
So some days it would have an odor and other days it wouldn't?
Yes.
Okay. And switching topics again, your daughter goes to Battle Creek Montessori.
Yes, she does.
Can you tell us a little bit about Battle Creek Montessori from what you've experienced during Coralina's time there?
So my daughter's been going there for about 3 years now. She was going to a regular school and I transferred her to Battle Creek Montessori because at that time it was what was best. She's a very hands-on learner. And with Battle Creek Montessori, they gear each, so instead of a big classroom, you have one curriculum for the entire classroom. Battle Creek Montessori takes each child individually, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and they do their curriculum to each child. They also have it where the classrooms are intertwined, where like kindergarten and first grade are together, so that it's teaching kids to help each other, to get more confident in their work, to be able to even go on further. Say, for example, Demetrius is a very smart boy. He's doing first grade work, and because they can test, it's not like he has to ask for it. If he's already passed all his kindergarten, they just give him the next thing. Battle Creek Montessori also has a lot of hands-on things. So say they hand you a piece of paper that has a bunch of math problems on it. They also have really cool different ways to help teach the kids. They have different tools that they can use so that if they're doing the math problem, they can use this tool to also help them with that. It's the same with reading and science and English. They have all these extra tools that it's not just reading a book or looking at a piece of paper. They get to intertwine with other things. Not only are they teaching them educational stuff, but they're also teaching them everyday life things. They do cooking with them. They teach them how to cut things properly. They have a whole section of like a house play area, but they use it as a learning tool as well. Since my daughter has been going there, I have not had, she's doing great in school. I haven't had any issues with, not being able to socialize. It's built her confidence up more because instead of if a kid gets in trouble, they help them work it out themselves. So they're teaching them how to navigate instead of an adult coming in and just doing it. And if they can't figure it out, then they, of course, the adult intercedes and then they work it out together. Now, eventually, yes, my daughter will transition into another school. But I feel like this was a super healthy tool for her because she did lack confidence before she went to Battle Creek Montessori and things. And she's grown tremendously since she's been there. It is also a school that I feel, it's a school that I've had friends leave and their kids have gone to other schools and they haven't had any issues with the transferring. I mean, you're going to get any kid, when they transfer from one school to another, no matter what the school is, there's gonna be, growing pains. But I don't think that it's gonna be that big of or that huge of a thing.
Okay, and does to your knowledge, does Battle Creek Montessori have the ability to incorporate prep to go into quote unquote normal school or regular public school once they're ready to change schools?
I do know that, for my daughter, she's going to be probably transferring in a year or two to a different school, and, they do help with the transition. And as of getting them prepared, I don't know how to exactly explain it.
That's okay. Prior to, how many years was she in regular public school prior to Montessori?
She went to public school for the first 3 years of her school education.
And to keep the answer short, have you noticed any sort of difference or improvements from prior to Battle Creek Montessori to where she is now?
The only difference or improvement I've noticed is they're more capable of doing one-on-one stuff rather than the larger classes.
Okay. Regarding the co-parenting and cooperation between the parties, has that always been what it is, or have you noticed a change?
I want to say from what I've noticed, in the beginning, it was inconsistent on Donnie's side from what I seen as of the amount of times that she would have him. And then it became more consistent where she wanted to have him these certain days. Since then, the co-parenting has been stressed, I would say.
Okay. And
Excuse me 1 minute, ma'am, did you say, what did you say? The co-parenting has been what?
Stressed.
Okay, that's what I thought.
and so when did you notice a change? I might have missed that, but when did you notice that change approximately?
Change in co-parenting is usually anything with big decisions pertaining to Demetrius. So I would say, from what I've seen, that would be the daycare, since daycare.
Okay, I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ives, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Spurlock. Would you agree, or what do you think about Demetrius? Does he lack confidence?
Does he lack confidence? Depending on the situation, but most of the
Thank you.
time, no.
Okay.
Depending on the situation, but most of the time, no.
Okay. And I know that's one of the things that you said helped your daughter out at the Montessori school. But Demetrius doesn't have that issue, does he?
No, like I said, most of the time he is very confident in his stuff. I know that socializing has been talked about prior in this courtroom, and that it's helpful in any school, really.
Sure. You would agree that there's different methods of teaching, from the public school, like Dudley versus the Montessori school, correct?
Most definitely, yes. They're two different types of teaching, yes.
And some students, would you agree, do better with more of a direct approach and then as opposed to the way the Montessori school runs with more of an indirect approach with learning. Would you agree with that?
I'm not understanding. What do you mean by indirect approach?
Well, the learning is the learning in the public school is more of a directed approach to the students, meaning they're directed on their tasks. Would you agree with that?
Battle Creek Montessori does do direct approach as well.
Okay. What benefit do you believe that Demetrius would have going to Montessori school versus the Dudley school?
I mean, I think just from what I've seen with Demetrius, he's a very smart child. But he does lack the discipline to be able to sit for long times or to if the class is sitting and has to listen to someone speak for a long time, he has trouble with that. And I think that him being able to use his hands and move around if he needs to would be helpful.
Now, was it your idea to put Demetrius in the Montessori Center last June of 2023, or was it Porter's?
It was Porter's idea. That situation arose because during that time, Porter was notified that the daycare, the scholarship that Donnie had Demetrius on was ending and daycare payments needed to be started, as well as there were multiple issues that Porter was having with the daycare, whether it be marks, bruises, sending him outside when the weather wasn't appropriate. Battle Creek Montessori, the summer school offered a free program to do. So I didn't really have, that's more Porter choosing that.
Okay, wasn't it more convenient for Demetrius to go to school at Montessori because your daughter goes there as well? Wouldn't that be true?
No, she was not going there for summer school, so it's not convenient. Now, if you're talking about as of right now, I mean, if two kids are going to two different schools, of course that's hard, but that's not the main reason that Porter wanted Demetrius at Montessori. That decision wasn't based off of his sole purpose of sending him there.
And right now, who gets Demetrius when Demetrius is in your care? And I understand he's there every other Wednesday night, and he's always in your care or at your home with his father on Thursday nights, correct?
I didn't understand, the first part cut out. I didn't hear you.
Oh, so Demetrius is in your home with his dad on alternating Wednesday evenings and every Thursday night, correct?
Correct. As well as Friday, Saturday, and Sundays.
And on Thursday morning, who gets Demetrius to school in the morning? Is it you or Mr. Ward?
Depending, sometimes we do take him, but my daughter's grandmother takes the kids in the morning. It's depending on the situation. There's times where if we don't take them, then my daughter's grandmother takes both of them.
Okay, do you work in the morning?
I do.
What time do you go into work?
I am going in at 6 o'clock, but that just recently, changed. I was working third shift for a little bit. So at that point, I was taking the kids to school, but I'm back to working at 6 a.m. in the morning now.
Okay, so you are unable to take your daughter or Demetrius to school in the morning. Is that correct?
Right now, yes, unless something changes where I need to take both of them because her grandmother can't take them, then yeah.
And what time does Porter leave for work in the morning?
It depends. Most of the time it's around 5:30, 5:45, 5:50.
And who is getting Demetrius ready for school in the morning if both of you 6 a.m.?
We set his clothes out. He gets himself ready in the morning, besides, help with brushing his teeth and his hair, but he dresses himself.
Who got some breakfast in the morning?
They do breakfast at school.
Okay, and then it's your mother or your grandmother that picks them up from your house and takes them to school?
Yes.
Okay, and what time does she come over to pick the children up?
He gets to our house around 5:20 and she stays there until it's time to get the kids up to take them to school, which school starts at 7:45. Well, drop off is at 7:45. Let me rephrase that.
Okay, so at this point, neither you nor Porter take Demetrius to school, is that correct?
At this moment, yes, but like I stated prior, I was working third shift, so I was the one taking them. But yes, right now, yes.
Okay, and then what time does Carolina, well, first,
Coralina.
Carolina, I'm sorry, your daughter Carolina and Demetrius, they get out of school when they're at the Montessori school. Do they get out at the same time?
3 o'clock.
And then who typically picks them up from school? Is it you or Porter?
Sorry, you froze on me. What?
I'm sorry, who generally picks the children up from school? Is it you or is it Porter?
Either of us, just depending on what we have going on the day. So it will be either Porter gets the kids or I do. Most of the time, Porter gets the kids, but sometimes we get them together. So again, it just depends on the day.
And on those days when Demetrius is at Dudley on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and why is it that you have to pick up Demetrius before the end of school?
So that's not always the case. Let's say I want to say there was a month where Porter was only getting him on Mondays. And whether it be I work past 2 o'clock. So whether it be he had to get Demetrius because I couldn't get to Coralina in time, or one of the kids had an appointment, or I had an appointment. I mean, there's different variables. If I needed to go back and look exactly day for day, I could tell you. Now, am I saying every single time there was something? No, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 3 times out of those entire times where we got him 20 minutes early, 10 minutes early, just to get him.
So you just took them out of school early just because you could?
Like I said, there was only probably 2 to 3 times that ever happened. Most of the time, it was due to not being able to get my daughter in time, so Porter would have to get one or the other. He can't be in 2 places at once. And with the way that the schedule has been lately, well, let me rephrase that. The way that the schedule was, trying to plan appointments and different things around was very hard. So there wasn't always time where I could make an appointment for my daughter or myself, or Porter couldn't make an appointment for Demetrius to where it was at after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then on Wednesdays, both of them get out at 3 o'clock. So it makes it difficult, which at times he's picked Coralina up early, or I've been able to get out in time to get her so that he can get him. It is definitely a ball juggling when you have 2 kids at 2 separate places, getting out at 2 separate times, but we do the best that we can.
And you are aware that Dudley has an after-school program that lasts until 5 o'clock, that there is opportunity for Demetrius to stay after school in a program, correct?
I'm aware of it, yes.
Okay. When you first approached Danielle about the Montessori school, you invited her to take a walk through there with you, correct?
I didn't approach her and I didn't invite her, but Porter did, yes. Porter asked her. And that was daycare, because there was issues at daycare. And if I'm recalling correctly, it was for pre-K to walk through Montessori. Donnie actually filled out the paperwork for him to go to Montessori at that time. But then there was there was reasonings why either it was drop off or the amount of money for the pre-K.
I want to stop you. I just want to go back to my question, because it was a yes or no. There was a walkthrough at the Montessori school that Danielle went to. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct that Donnie went to a walkthrough.
Okay,
yes.
And you were there with her?
I was there with her and Porter, yes.
Okay. Now, ultimately, after that walkthrough, Danielle was not convinced that that was the best choice for their son, correct?
No. That's not correct.
Okay, that's not correct. Well, she
No,
didn't want your son to go.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
It was not her selection for Demetrius to go to Montessori, correct?
No,
She didn't
I
want
guess
him to
I
go
meant
there, correct?
after the walkthrough, Donnie was on board after the walkthrough. What transpired I guess she was not on board but after the walkthrough, yes. Donnie had paperwork, filled it out, gave it to Porter. So to say that she was not at all is not true.
All right, but at some point she did not agree with Demetrius attending Montessori at some point after that.
Correct, yes.
Now when Demetrius ended up being enrolled, how come Danielle's name wasn't put on any paperwork at the Montessori school?
Donnie's paperwork was put on, the summer school program paperwork, all of it. To my understanding, with the kindergarten school year, Donnie did not want to have anything to do with Montessori, per my understanding. She is on the emergency as far as I know.
Okay. Are you aware that she's not been able to get any of Demetrius's school records in attendance at the Montessori school?
I wouldn't have an answer for that. I'm not Donnie, so I don't know if she would be
And
able
then
to or
that's fine.
not.
If you don't know, that's fine. If you don't know if that's your answer, that's fine. Is that your answer?
Yeah, I don't know if she's not been allowed to get that information.
Okay. If the court were to order and allow Demetrius to stay in the public school at Dudley, would you and Porter be able to pick Demetrius up on the on the portions of the week that you consistently have Demetrius?
I mean, we've already proven that he's been able to get him. But that's at Dudley. From my understanding,
Right,
for
well,
first grade is Fremont, and that's a whole nother conversation. But at
Okay.
Dudley, yes, Porter has been picking him up.
And why would Fremont be different?
Fremont is further away, so we would definitely have to, nobody knows the times or anything like that, so I can't answer that question because I don't know any information.
How much farther away is the Fremont school if Demetrius were to go there?
I have no idea.
No. Okay. And now I understand that you and Danielle typically communicate fairly well together. Would that be true?
Most of the time, yes.
I know just recently, Demetrius was sick and had a sick day on March 13th, which was a day that Demetrius was in Danielle's care. Do you recall that day?
Mm-hmm, yes.
And Danielle had dropped Demetrius off, but had to immediately turn around and pick him up because he was throwing up at school.
Yes.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
And I understand during that day, she communicated with you to tell you what was going on, correct?
Correct.
And that Demetrius was homesick with her.
Correct.
And she informed you that instead of picking Demetrius up at school, that Demetrius would be home with her because he was sick that day, correct?
Correct.
And so just kind of given that interaction, I mean, there wasn't anything rude or considerate or condescending about those conversations, was there?
No.
Okay. I also understand that when you do exchange Demetrius, either when Danielle drops him off or when you guys provide transportation, that that those interactions go very well.
Correct.
I mean, there's no I guess what I mean, no arguing or fighting between Danielle and Porter.
Not
correct?
always, but yes. There has been a occasion where, a conversation has been had, but, never in front of Demetrius.
Okay, and it's fair to say they're both conscientious of that when Demetrius is around.
From what I've seen.
You had mentioned, or we had talked about that October 15th, 2022 date. If you know why, I mean, if you know, and maybe you don't, but do you know why Porter called Danielle's mom and not simply calling Danielle to let her know what was going on with Demetrius that day?
Porter did not call her mom. He texted her mom to let her know. And my understanding from what Porter said, that Donnie was working that weekend or that day, that's why he contacted his mom and not her, because he thought that she was at work.
Were you aware that she actually showed up to the soccer game?
After extensive messages left by her, yes.
And I understand she did apologize after she figured out that he didn't arrive and that the reasoning why, correct?
I don't know if I'd call that an apology, but she calmed down. Yes, she did calm down.
Okay. I mean, would it be fair to say if you showed up to an event where your daughter was supposed to be at and she wasn't there and no one had any answers, you would be a little bit upset too?
Not to that extent. That was extreme. And the reasoning was not because of him not being at the soccer game. The reasoning was because she was worried that something happened to him. It had nothing to do really with soccer. But again, anybody I leave my daughter in care with, I know that they are capable of making sure that she is well taken care of. And if something did happen to her, I know that they would contact me right away. So again, I don't feel that that type of recourse was called for, nor do I feel that it was appropriate. Threatening to kick someone's door in with two little children, and to harm the other person. At no point do I think that that is okay.
Now, there was never any instance where she actually appeared and kicked your door in, or that never happened, correct?
Just because someone doesn't follow through doesn't mean the threat is still
I'm
not
just asking
real.
if I understand that, but it never happened. She never showed up and kicked your door in ever, correct?
No, she never actually showed up to my house and kicked my door in. No.
That's it. Thank you. Well, this issue about when Danielle first took Demetrius to get a pair of glasses, were you involved in any of those conversations?
I was told about them, yes.
And it's true that Danielle wanted to seek an eye doctor appointment for Demetrius, but Porter didn't feel he was having an eye issue. Is that correct?
The conversation was, Donnie told Porter that Demetrius has blue eyes and he squinted when he read a book. So when Porter and I talked about it, yes, Porter didn't see at that moment because he wasn't given all the information. I know if someone said that my kid squinted when they read a book and they got blue eyes, I'd be like, oh, okay. Now, if they would have said, hey, you know, this, and this, and these are the other issues, then of course, I would most definitely think that some doctor appointment needed to be looked into. Of course.
Well, Demetrius was having a lot of bruising and running into things during that time, correct?
I cannot say so because when Donnie and Porter investigated into most of those bruises and marks, they weren't always because he ran into something or because he couldn't see. Some of it was kids hitting him or other situations. But again, if
Oh.
Porter was told that he was running into things, then of course, he would want to make an appointment.
But there were discussions that was happening, correct? I mean, I
Discussions,
know you just gave an explanation that there was other reasons for bruises, but that was one of the reasons why, correct?
not to my recall, no. Nobody ever had a conversation with him about the bruises are because he's running into things. Again, from what I know.
Regarding the change to Demetrius's healthcare provider, what healthcare provider does Coralina see?
She goes to Serial City.
And I understand that Porter has now placed Demetrius at Serial City as well.
Yeah.
Were you part of any of the discussions regarding that change from Demetrius's normal pediatrician? Just if you were part of the conversations, that's a yes or no question.
I know that Porter said that
First of all, it's
Donnie
a yes
wanted.
or no question. Wait. Your Honor, first of all, it's a yes or no question. And I would ask the court to just instruct her if she was part of the conversation. It's yes
Okay.
or no.
Go ahead, just answer it. She's saying, were you a part of the conversation?
Does she mean part of the conversation with Donnie and Porter or part of the
Yes.
conversation with me and Porter?
No, I think she met with the plaintiff and defendant. Is that correct, Ms. Ives?
Yes, Your Honor.
I was not part of the conversation between Donnie and Porter, no.
Regarding the 2022 holiday, when you were refreshing your memory on your notes, were those notes made contemporaneously at the time, or were those notes more recently made?
The 2022, are you talking about the Christmas or the 2023 Christmas?
The 2023 Christmas when Mr. Ward's attorney asked you to refresh your memory on your notes.
That was 2022, when Donnie took Demetrius for over a week and a half. That was 2022's Christmas. 2023's Christmas.
Okay. Okay, the question is about your notes that you were referring to. Were those notes made contemporaneously at the time in 2022, or were they made more recently?
The notes from 2022 are notes that have been compiled over this entire situation.
When you say entire situation, you mean since the beginning of this case?
No, I mean, since the beginning of when Donnie started withholding Demetrius from Porter.
I have no further questions.
The Storm, any redirect?
Yes, just a bit, Your Honor. You were asked regarding whether the two of you communicate well usually. That's specifically when you're in person, correct?
You talk about me and Donnie?
Oh, I'm sorry. My notes I meant to say Porter and Donnie, that they communicate well, usually in person, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And they mentioned the March 13th sick day that Donnie communicated with you that day about the sickness. Did you or did Porter regularly get informed when there were issues like this?
No, we didn't.
Okay. How often, if you had to give a percentage of number of times you received notification and number of times you found out after the fact through some other means, what would that percentage division look like?
I want to say the only time we were notified is if it was one of his days. So I'm going to say maybe a handful of times, maybe 5 times.
5 times that it was,
That we knew about him being sick, but most of the time that was only due because we were either getting him that day or there was going to be some kind of interaction with him.
okay. And if, based on the times that you and Porter have found out after the fact, approximately how many times was that?
Are we including times that she told us or times that we found out through?
Either times that either Ms. Newbern told you guys after the fact or found that you two found out through other means like insurance papers.
I'd probably say over 10 times.
Okay, so over twice the number of times of actual being informed.
Yes.
Okay. You were cut off a little bit when you were answering about the threats, but no, Donnie, Ms. Newbern never actually coming to the house and actually acting out those threats. What was it that you were trying to say?
I'm trying to,
That's okay. I believe the question was, did Ms. Newbern ever actually come to the house and kick in the door or enact any physical violence on either of you? And you said no, she had never actually done that. So I guess I'll rephrase and say, so how did those threats make you feel, even though she's not actually taken action on them yet?
I was in fear for my child, for her child, for Porter. I know that I told Porter that if she did show up, that I would call the cops. Because that's the last thing I want either of our children to see is that sort of anger and violence. And that wasn't the only time being threatened. So not knowing whether she was going to follow through with it or not, that really didn't play in of how it made me feel about the situation.
Is it something that you still think that Ms. Newbern could do?
Depending on the day, most definitely. Most definitely.
Regarding the bruising connection with the glasses, was that ever brought up by Ms. Newbern?
Just what I said prior, the blue eyes and the squinting with reading a book, but as of the bruises, no, not because of running into things, not to my recollection.
Did anybody at daycare indicate that to you, reporter?
No. It
So
wasn't until after.
it wasn't until after glasses, or?
No, after us being in court that they even said that was or no, I'm sorry. It wasn't until after he got the glasses that the daycare said, oh, well, now he's got glasses. So that was why all the bruising was happening.
Gotcha. Okay. How long had Coralina been going to Serial City for her medical needs prior to Demetrius using them?
Her whole life
So
since she was born.
you knew the providers well as far as their scheduling abilities and how quickly it takes to get people in?
Yes, that was one of the reasons I suggested it to Porter when he mentioned that Donnie wanted to change doctors. That was one of the reasons I suggested and said, hey, you know, I don't ever have an issue. I can get her in right then. And thought, you know, here's an option.
So was the convenience of the fact that Coralina goes there the determining factor or a factor that weighed into the discussion between you and Porter regarding Serial City?
No, that had nothing, whether a child has the same doctor or not, has nothing to do with one of the other children because 90% of the time their appointments aren't together. They're two different ages. One is 5, the other's 9. So that really had zero factor in it.
Okay. And Serial City takes Porter's health insurance?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Ives, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Gerlach, that concludes your testimony. Thank you and your excuse. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Your Honor, that would conclude my witnesses. At this time, I was hoping we might be able to take a quick 5-minute break or so for me to use the bathroom.
Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes. Attorney Ives?
Yes.
Okay, one moment. We are back on the record.
Okay. Welcome back. Ms. Storm, you had rested, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Ives, your presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. We will call Danielle Newburn.
Okay. Ms. Newburn, we'll just tell you you're still sworn in, so you, okay? You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Ives.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Newburn, let's start off. How did you first meet Mr. Porter Ward?
He came to my club with a couple of friends of ours in 2016.
And we were saying,
Ms. Ives, I do not want to hear all this history back from when they dated and all of this stuff. I mean, we've taken enough time and that's ridiculous.
okay. Well, I'll try to kind of jump it forward. Okay, Your Honor?
Jump it forward to when the time the child was born or something where it's more recent.
When you and Mr. Porter first had, when Demetrius was first born, were you and Mr. Porter living together at that time?
Yes, we were.
Okay, just describe to me how your relationship was when you initially were living together when Demetrius was born.
He worked at night. So during the day, he was either asleep or like we would watch movies, kind of just hang out. That first month, my moms were both there, so they were helping a lot and kind of just letting me and Porter rest as new parents. But Demetrius was breastfeeding, so.
Now, were you working at that time or were you on maternity leave?
I was on maternity leave at that time.
Okay, and do you recall how long were you a stay-at-home mom then for the first part of Demetrius's life?
For the first part, yes.
Okay, and do you know how long it was you stayed at home before you started back up to work?
Definitely over like 9 months or so, but I can't pinpoint.
Now, Mr. Ward had indicated that while you were a stay-at-home mom, you didn't do any of the household duties there. Do you agree with that?
I don't completely agree with that, no.
Okay, and why is that?
Porter did cook a lot. He also did a lot of the cleaning, but I helped cook sometimes. I also cleaned sometimes. So it was like, it wasn't necessarily 50-50, but we did both do things.
And during that time, your son, what doctor was he originally seeing after he was born?
When he was first born, he went to Grace Health and he saw Dr. Metler.
This has been asked and answered, Your Honor, by this witness and my client.
It has, I'll sustain the objection. Please don't be redundant.
Okay, when you first went to doctor appointments, did Mr. Ward go with you to those appointments?
So the first couple, yes, he drove, he stayed.
Okay, did he go to, I mean, out of the first year your son was born, how many do you think he went to?
I think just the first couple. But he didn't really go to the hospital too much after that. Like the first couple visits, the initial one, and I want to say the one after that was his vaccines or something like that. But other than that, I went to most of them with either by myself or with my mom.
And is it fair to say that your son stayed in that same medical center?
Yes.
And there came about a change. And how did that come about to your son's medical provider?
So there was an incident where he couldn't get in, and I was slightly disgruntled about that, and I said something to Porter. And then shortly after, there was an issue with insurance that caused an issue with Porter and them at Grace Health that made him like solidify that he wanted to change.
Shut my door to my office. I left it open. And ultimately, how did you discuss the new medical care provider?
I text Porter and I asked him if he was like okay with looking into somewhere else originally. And then there wasn't really anything after that. He said something about, I would have to look back in my text messages, but I think he might have said Serial City at first. And then we never really talked much about anything after that.
When your son first went to Serial City, then that was the new provider, correct?
Yes.
And did he tell you that he was selecting Serial City?
I didn't know that that's where he had selected, nor did I know that he had an appointment for that first one.
All right. Now, since then, that first appointment, has he kept you involved in the appointment schedule, or have there been any appointments?
I was told about appointments after the fact, but I didn't know about them beforehand.
What kind of appointments has he had that you weren't aware of?
So half of the doctor's appointments that were talked about in this case, I didn't even know that he was having. The only one that I was told about was the one initially after his eyeglasses appointment.
And we'll talk about the eyeglass in just a second. Do you have any objection to Mr. Ward actually changing your son's pediatrician?
Honestly, because his insurance is the one that's being used, I would say no, if that's where he thinks is best, and they actually take it.
Okay. And to your knowledge, they're able to get your son in for appointments?
That's how it seems, yeah.
All right. Well, let's go back and talk about this glasses issue, when that came about. Do you recall the approximate time that first issue arose?
I want to say sometime in March of last year, I talked to Lindsay Potter, and we were discussing the fact that he came home with so many bruises, as well as the fact that he was squinting all the time. And I told both her and Porter and my mom that I thought glasses might be necessary. I've had them since I was really little, as well as after a little bit of research, I found that they say blue-eyed people have just a little bit more trouble.
Objection, this
with
is
their eyes.
hearsay.
And I said
mean,
something
she's just saying she's looking up things that have no, I haven't had a chance to review it, that, yeah.
Well, I won't accept it for the truth as asserted, only that led her to again, look
Yeah.
into the glasses.
Okay, so ultimately, what steps did you take when you, after that discussion with Miss Lindsay Potter?
I said something to Porter, and then, like
Well,
I
hold
said,
on, what did you say to Porter?
while it was an exchange, and we were talking about a bruise that he had noticed, I want to say on a leg or something. Like he had a bruise, and we were talking about it, and I was like, he does run into things a lot, and I think he might need glasses. He said he didn't agree. I told him my reasonings. He again told me he didn't agree. He told me both Alicia and her daughter have blue eyes and they didn't need glasses. So we kind of just left it at that. I did complain to my mom a little bit about it, and then she made that appointment for his eyes and told us like, hey, I made him an eye doctor appointment, just so you can have a little bit of peace of mind. And I was like, okay.
And who took Demetrius to that eye appointment?
I did. In all honesty, I'd forgotten about it for a little bit because it was like 3 months out. And then my mom texted us like, hey, don't forget, he has this appointment. And I texted Porter first to see if he could take him. He said he couldn't get out of work. And I was like, that's fine, I'll do it. And so I switched a shift so that I could take him.
And then ultimately, did your son need glasses?
Yes, he did.
I understand after that, Porter took him to us for a second opinion.
Yeah, they said that his glasses were a little bit too big for him, and they wanted a second opinion also on I think the strength of the lenses or something else. It was right after he broke them.
Did you have any objection to them getting a second opinion on the glasses or on the eye doctor?
I thought it was unnecessary, but I didn't push on it just because it didn't seem like an argument that needed to be had.
And ultimately now your son has a different optometrist from the one you took him to.
Yes,
Do you know who that is?
I do not. I wasn't told the actual doctor. I was just told that it was someone that I think Alicia used to work for or took Corlina to.
Would you like to be informed of that information?
I would, only because I'd like to know certain little details.
Okay, well, it's your son.
Yeah.
And no one's offered that information to you as of this date?
Not that I can recall.
Let's go back to the time when, do you recall when you and Mr. Ward first separated? And this is after Demetrius is born.
There was a small separation, I want to say in 2020, like right around the time of COVID, where I went back to my notice for a little bit, and I was kind of like in his house and in her house back and forth.
When do you recall the time when you guys ultimately separated and didn't move back in together?
When we actually separated and didn't move back in, it was in 2021, I want to say.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
At the time you separated and just before, who was living in the house at that time?
It was me, Porter, and my best friend, Jericia.
Okay, were Mr. Porter's sons living there? Or Mr. Ward's sons living there?
Both of them were kind of there on and off. It depended. They would like stay with us for a little bit, and then they would get into it with Porter, and they would go back to their moms, and then they'd get into it with her, and they'd come back here.
You heard some testimony earlier or previously about your fights or arguments that you would get in with Mr. Ward. Do you recall hearing those statements?
I do.
I mean, from your point of view, can you just, first of all, kind of describe the relationship you feel like you had with Mr. Ward right about the time you last separated?
Right before we last separated, it was kind of rocky. We would be fine for a couple days, and then it would be like he had an attitude and he'd be huffing around the house, and kind of like if you asked him what was wrong, he'd give an attitude or it's nothing, it doesn't matter, my feelings don't matter anyways, instead of actually talking to anybody. And then when you tried to push on it, it would be an explosion, in which case I will admit I didn't always react the best because I would explode back.
Where did you move to when you, or first of all, do you recall the exact or the approximate time when you last lived together?
October of that 2021 year, I want to say.
Okay. And where did you go to?
When I left him, I went to my grandmother's house.
Okay. When you initially moved out, were you was Demetrius staying with you?
He was staying with his dad. I would just go and make sure he ate dinner and feed him, bathe him. We would read a book, and then I'd put him to bed.
Where was Mr. Ward during this time?
I think he was working thirds, or like he at least got out late. Sometimes he'd be at club stuff, but most of the time it was work.
So you would come over to the house and he wasn't there?
Yes, I'd be with Reese. Reese would be there, occasionally Reese's best friend Austin or his girlfriend, and then Skylar and occasionally Dominic.
Do you feel at that time that you and Mr. Ward were able to discuss things that were important for Demetrius's sake?
Yeah, at that time we were doing pretty good at communication.
And at some point thereafter, you got your own place for a while.
Yes.
And do you recall when you got your own place?
The summer of the summer of 2022, I want to say. I lived there for a year and a half. It might have been 2021.
When you got your own place, did the situation change where Demetrius was now staying with you?
He was with me more days than before, yes, because he'd have overnights at my house during the beginning of the week or on the days that I didn't have to work at Vegas.
And when you were living on your own, how many, what do you think was the schedule at that time?
Pretty similar to the one that we have now, except for there were sporadic days in between. So basically that's still like half and half.
And what happened to the apartment that you had?
The house that I had, my landlord decided to put up for sale, and I could not afford to buy it at that time, so I had to move back in with my grandmother.
When did you move back in with your grandmother?
April of last year.
So April 2023?
Yeah. So it was 2021.
Okay, so, and you're still with your grandmother?
Yes.
And what are the sleeping arrangements right now at your grandmother's house for you and Demetrius?
Demetrius has his own bed. It's kind of on this side of the room. My bed's on this side of the room.
Okay, and you're not involved, are you involved with anybody?
I've had a boyfriend named Michael for about a year now.
Does he live with you?
He does not.
Okay. So you and Demetrius share the room together and there's no other individuals in that room?
No, it's just us.
Okay, and your grandmother, where does she live?
She lives in the house with us, but her room is like on the opposite side of our wall.
All right, and then there was some testimony that you leave Demetrius alone with your grandmother?
He's never left alone with my Nona. Anytime he is left with her, my cousin is upstairs. He spends most of his time upstairs. He does like delivery or something, so he's usually at the house. And I'll text him and I'll be like, hey, or I'll knock on his door and I'll say, hey, I'm gonna leave Bubba here with Nona. Like, you want to come down? And he'll either leave his door open or he'll come down and check every once in a while.
I mean, how often does this happen that you would leave and need assistance?
Not very often. It's literally like if I get called in to work at Vegas on a last minute run, or if I've got to run to the store and Demetrius decides he doesn't want to go with me because he's very outspoken on whether or not he wants to stay at the house or go into a store.
Um, let's talk about when you first signed Demetrius up to daycare. Let's go
Okay.
back to that point. Tell me how you picked Bright Lights Learning Center originally.
I just kind of hopped on the internet and was looking around at the places in Battle Creek. I looked at oh my gosh, if I could remember the name. There is a small school in Lakeview that my friends.
Again, Your Honor, this was asked and answered over during my direct of Ms. Newbern of how she chose and how many she looked at. She had testified to this already.
Okay, Ms. Ives, what's your response?
I'll continue. I'll move on, Your Honor. I forgot that I
Okay.
had asked that question.
Thank you.
When you selected Bright Lights, did you have a conversation with Mr. Ward about that?
I did. It was a quick like text message conversation. There was a quick one on the phone and then a quick text message conversation.
And did he agree with you placing Demetrius at Bright Lights Learning Center?
He told me that was fine, yes.
And did he ever go with you to do the walkthrough?
No, we were kind of just texting the whole time. I was saying, oh, I like this and this and this. And he was like, oh yeah, well, what about this? And he was like, did you look into that? And so I'd ask.
And I understand you both needed some form of daycare at that time because you had employment and
Yes.
obligations, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you first started at Bright Lights, did you guys have a pattern of care that you recall?
Like it was still that sporadic of like, hey, do you want them? Well, yeah, I'll take them. Hey, I've got this thing to do. Do you want to grab them? It was more like that, but still most of the time during the beginning of the week I had them.
Okay, and what do you recall that looked like? I mean, were you the one dropping them off? Were you picking them up like we?
Yeah, I would drop him off on my way to work. Porter would pick him up, unless I had the day off or I ended up getting out at like 3, because then I'd get there at like 3:30, 3:45, and so I would get him.
At what point did you have issues with the Bright Lights? When did you start feeling that Mr. Ward wasn't fond of Demetrius going to Bright Lights?
There started to be a point where he was noticing more bruises and he'd be like, hey, I don't like how many bruises are going on here. And so and he didn't get any like confirmation from any teachers or anything on where they came from. So then I would go up and I would talk to Miss Potter. But after a couple months of that, I want to say he wasn't really happy with them and he asked about looking into something else.
Now, did you have concern about these bruises yourself?
I did have concerns and I voiced those concerns to Miss Lindsay. And when she started being better about communicating with me throughout the day, whenever something happened, I was feeling better about it.
And do you think a lot of the bruises were because of the sight problems that Demetrius was having?
I do believe that a lot of them were because he wasn't able to fully see things. I also believe some of it is just because he moves his body so much. He does like the ADHD lean.
Do you ever suspect or do you ever believe there was any type of abuse going on in Mr. Ward's home?
I do not believe so.
And do you think they would ever suspected you of any abuse or they ever made any allegations that you had caused the bruises specifically?
No.
Okay, So you don't think there's any type of abuse situation between you and Mr. Ward's household, correct?
Oh, not at all. He doesn't even get spankings.
Let's talk about discipline. Do you believe that you and Mr. Ward have an agreement regarding disciplinary actions?
Yes, when he was very, very young, we had a conversation about the fact that due to my childhood, I don't believe children should be hit in order to be disciplined, and he agreed.
And do you believe that he's maintained that agreement as far as it relates to your son?
As far as I know,
And are you still in agreement not to use any physical discipline?
I am in agreement. He goes in corners in my house.
Well, and that's what I was the next, what are the disciplinary techniques that you use?
He goes in the corner, he will get his phone taken away, or my boyfriend got him this little Nintendo thing. He gets that taken away. Occasionally he will have to like write a sentence. He hasn't written a sentence in a very long time, and that was only because he was lying.
And do you think Mr. Ward is in agreement, or has he ever expressed to you that he's in agreement with those kind of techniques?
I would assume that he's in agreement, yes. He said that at their house, it's a similar situation where he gets his electronics taken and is put in the corner.
If Mr. Ward ever said to you, Demetrius is grounded from his phone this week, would you provide or continue with that punishment to be on the same page as he is?
I actually have done that. When Demetrius first started lying, he got his phone taken away, and they text me to say that he was told he can't have electronics until he learns to tell the truth, and I agreed with that. So he had his phone, or he didn't have his phone for like, I want to say a week or two.
And then, going back to the Bright Lights Learning Center, how did it come about then that you, from your perspective, that Demetrius ended up in 2 daycares?
I had taken to checking his like login, because the way that Bright Lights has their situation set up is you get this app on your phone and you can check like when kids get checked in and out. And I went to check it in because normally I get a notification, and he hadn't been checked in that day. So I texted him to say, hey, did you forget to check him in? He was like, no, he's not going there today. And I asked if I could ask why. And he told me that because he would be going to the Montessori program on his days.
And I understand that that was actually in a text message, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I want to say in June of last year. I would have to check for the specific date.
I'm gonna show you what we marked as Exhibit 1. Can you identify what that exhibit is?
This is the text message conversation from June 22nd, where I asked if he forgot to sign him in.
Okay. And does that text message further provide a response regarding why he wasn't signed into daycare?
It does. It says that he's going to Battle Creek Montessori on the days that he's with Porter.
And at that point, had you already seen the Montessori school?
Yes.
And after reviewing and seeing the Montessori school, what was your opinion of Demetrius attending?
The school itself seemed really nice, but I believe Demetrius would have done better in a more structured situation, somewhere where he's got like a routine, if that makes sense. He does really well with like, I'm not gonna say military scheduling, but like blocked scheduling, I guess is what I'm looking for.
And did you know that they were going to actually enroll him in Montessori school in the summer prior to this message?
I did not.
You knew that they were looking at the Montessori school.
I did know that they were looking. I knew that he was trying to convince me to put him in Montessori. And I was at the time talking to a couple of teachers I know and doing my own kind of research.
Now, you made it clear in this message dated June 22nd that that was not acceptable, that going to Montessori school was not acceptable to you, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I literally said the words, that is not acceptable.
Ultimately, did you and Mr. Ward have any other discussions regarding the Montessori school at that point?
After this, I do not believe we had any more discussions. It was kind of just, he said that's how it was going to be for while he was with him, and I said okay, because there was really no arguing it.
What was your at that point when you found out that he was going to Montessori school, what was the split at that point regarding the care?
I had him Sunday night through, I want to say Thursdays, except for those days where I would ask him like, hey, do you want him today? I've got this or that I want to do. And I would prefer him be with his father over a babysitter for a couple hours.
Do you know if his father does the same for you? Meaning if your father, if he's not going to be available and let's say he gets called into work on a Saturday or he does something, does he give you the same courtesy and call you to see if you would like to watch Demetrius?
No, he does not. As far as I know, he goes to his brothers, his uncles. A cousin of his watches him occasionally.
Would you like that same courtesy?
I would like that same courtesy.
Do you know what a first right of refusal is in the legal world?
That's when we, like, if we have,
Objection, Your Honor. This is nothing that's ever been pled as far as right of first refusal. This is the first I've heard of Ms. Newbern requesting the right of first refusal. I don't believe it's properly before the court.
Okay, Ms. Ives?
Well, Your Honor, I believe the court has to address the ultimate division of parenting time potentially. And I think that that would be a consideration for the court to make.
Well, I don't think she needs to go into the practice of first refusal. She can talk about what they do or what she wants, but I don't think she, again, has the expertise or knowledge to testify about what first right of refusal. She said she didn't know what it was.
Your Honor, I will rephrase my question.
Okay,
If you are not available to take care of Demetrius, or let's say Mr. Ward is not, would you believe that the other parent should have the opportunity to watch Demetrius?
yes, I do.
Okay, and would you like to be afforded that opportunity?
I would.
Going back then this last summer, I would also, Your Honor, I would ask that we enter defendant's exhibit 1.
okay. Ms. Storm, any response?
No objection to exhibit 1.
Okay, exhibit 1 will be admitted.
How did it come about that Demetrius got enrolled in Dudley School?
We had been trying to figure out where to put him in school.
When you say we, who is we?
Porter and I, sorry, had been trying to figure out where to put him in school. And there was really nothing coming of it. And it was getting down to the wire. So I signed him up for Dudley.
And why did you choose Dudley?
Because we had just missed the cutoff for Fremont. And they have a similar or according to online, they had a similar kind of curriculum with them doing STEM programs and being able to do the Bearcat Advantage. And so in order to keep him in Battle Creek Public Schools for the Bearcat Advantage, and within the STEM program, I signed him up for Dudley.
And did you discuss that with Mr. Ward?
I told him that I wanted him in Battle Creek Public Schools for the Bearcat Advantage as well as the STEM program, yes.
Does your son's ability to attend college matter to you?
It does, greatly.
And by enrolling him in Battle Creek School, he would have an opportunity for college, correct?
Yes, he would. He'd also have the opportunity to dual enroll during his high school.
Objection, we've already discussed this and had testimony over this.
And
Well, I don't think there was any testimony about the dual enrollment, but there was about the other, so.
and are there other advantages that you see to enrolling your son into Dudley?
He's already really good friends with all the kids there. Well, not all the kids there, but a lot of the kids there, if we're talking about this upcoming school year. But if we're talking about the last one, it helped that my cousin Raquel was going to be part of the 21st Century program, as well as I know people within the school system.
And what is the 21st Century program that's available at Dudley? Was that a consideration in your decision to enroll Demetrius at Dudley?
It was a consideration. I myself went to the Bearcat program when I was a kid, and it actually is the reason that I was reading so well, as well as a lot of math problems that I had. I'm not very good at math, but I got better because of their program.
Why do you feel that, well, first of all, where would you like Dudley, or where would you like Demetrius to finish the school year out in?
I would prefer he finish the school year out at Dudley just because he spends most of his week there already, and I think him going to just one school would be more beneficial.
Do you think it's would be beneficial for him to continue? I mean, it's just kindergarten to complete the year as he's been doing?
I do not, even though it's just kindergarten, I think that starting him out in a situation in which he feels as though like, I can't say how he feels, but having him in a situation where he goes to two different schools with two different rules makes it harder to transition next year to be in just one place with one set of rules.
And as far as next year, where would you like to see Demetrius go to school?
I would prefer that he stay in Battle Creek Public Schools. Honestly, would really love Fremont, but Dudley is really good as well, so it'd be fine if he stayed there.
So you don't care if he stays in Dudley or Fremont, just as long as he's in the Battle Creek school system?
Yes, and as long as he's not going to one of their lower schools like A&J or I think it's Franklin Post.
So in a sense,
I want him at the better schools with the better curriculums within Battle Creek Public Schools, yes, but within Battle Creek Public Schools.
does your son particularly excel in certain areas?
He is great when it comes to math, science. He's pretty good at reading and his letters.
Is there an advantage that you see that Dudley has over the Montessori school?
I don't know enough about the Montessori school to say that it's necessarily the biggest advantage, but I think that him being able to do those computer programs where they work on their math and things like that is very, very much a benefit for him.
given the class structure between the Montessori school and Dudley school, what do you think is in your Demetrius's best interest in that regard?
I do believe that Dudley would be better just because I've personally, when he's with me, Demetrius does better when he's being directed the entire time. So like if we're doing his workbooks and I sit him down and I'm like, hey, let's do page 1 and 2 here, instead of being like, here's your workbook, do what you want. Or, you know, or like these couple pages.
Objection, how does she know that this is what's going on when she's already indicated and testified that she doesn't know what goes on in Battle Creek Montessori?
Okay. Ms. Ives, what's your response?
Well, if I could, I think she could answer if she does know, and I could do a follow-up question, Your Honor.
Well, if she knows.
We just had a parent-teacher conference, like last week or the week before, in which they were trying to explain to me that they sit them down and they give them certain things that they're supposed to do, and then they get to do like, so he gets a math sheet and he gets to go to this wall that's over on the side, and there's a activity set that helps with that math set. So like when he's learning how many pieces are in a triangle, there's 3, and he knows that because he can break the 3 blocks apart and put them back together. Whereas at Dudley, his teacher will give him a workbook and say, Demetrius, I need you to do this part. And then he does that part and she looks over it. She works with him if he needs the help, though she did say that he doesn't normally need too much help.
So it's just different styles of learning.
Yes.
Do you think your son at this point is better off in a more structured learning environment as opposed to the Montessori style?
I do believe he is.
This 21st century program that Dudley has, why is that important to you?
Because 1, it allows me to get to work on time. I didn't have to change my schedule any more than I already did. And as well as it allows him time to interact with his friends. It allows him to do extra work. When he was going to the after school program part of it, he got to finish his homework before he even came home. So his entire time home, it was just like, we went over it to make sure that it was done and he understood it. And then it was all playtime. And he liked that.
On the days that Demetrius is with you on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning, are you able to get him to school on time?
I am. He gets there around, we get there around 7:45, which is when I think they open at 7:40, so about 5 minutes after they open.
All right. And what about at the conclusion of school? Are you out of work in time to pick him up?
Most days I'm just getting into town. So without the after school program, I would say it depends on the day, but most of the time, yeah.
There was some discussion that you were deliberately trying to prevent Mr. Ward from seeing Demetrius and took a different job to change your schedule. Was that done intentionally?
I have never changed my job to intentionally harm Porter or like hurt Porter or like take time away from him. It just happens to work out that way occasionally.
Generally, and going back to when your child was at the Bright Lights Learning Center up through this time, generally would Porter or Mr. Ward pick Demetrius up on your typical days from daycare or school early?
Um, you couldn't necessarily say it was early, but like most of the kids got picked up around 4 and he got picked up around like 3:30, I think, which is earlier than most of the kids, but it was daycare. So really when you could get them, you could get them.
And I understand you wouldn't be able to get off work until later in the afternoon.
Oh, at that time, yes.
And you would pick Demetrius if Mr. Ward was able to get Demetrius from daycare or school early. How would you then get Demetrius if it was your day?
Sometimes I would pick him up, sometimes he would drop him off. It kind of just depended on what each was doing and like honestly, I think it was more of like who wanted him more that day. Like there were days where I'd be like, hey, you know, I've had a really rough day and I feel like it would be better if he stayed with you. And he'd be like, okay. And then there were days where he'd be like, hey, he wants you. And I'm like, okay. So it depended.
Do you don't have any objection if Mr. Ward were to exercise time if you're at work? Do you have any objection to that?
None at all.
And but this 21st century program that's after school, Mr. Ward had been taking Demetrius or picking Demetrius up right after school. And thus Demetrius wasn't able to participate in that 21st century program. What are your thoughts about that?
I honestly, I wish that he could still go. I don't know how to explain that he wants to go without it being hearsay, but like
Objection, that is hearsay.
Sustained.
What, just what in your viewpoint does your son benefit from going to that 21st century program?
He benefits with, again, getting to be with his friends as well as help with school.
Say asked and answered, Your Honor. She asked how he would benefit, and she's now repeating her answer about getting to see his friends. And she already testified about the fact that he gets to work on homework before or after school.
Sustained.
Are you able to have any flexibility with your job to pick Demetrius up by the time he gets out of school?
Yes, if I were to say something to my bosses, they would fix my schedule so that I could get out earlier.
And ultimately, have you been doing that?
I have not, just because one, I know he wants that time with his dad as well as his dad wants that time with him, and that extra hour actually helps me to be able to pay my bills.
Okay. So, so next year, if Demetrius were to stay at Dudley, would he be enrolled in that 21st century program?
I think me and Porter would have to discuss it. I would want him to be, but ultimately it would be a joint decision.
Now you have to, you have no problem getting Demetrius to school on time, correct?
Are we talking
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
All right,
Yeah.
you're right, yeah.
Sustained.
Let's see, I'm gonna rephrase the question. Do you rely on anyone in the morning to help you with transportation?
Oh, no, ma'am.
If you, the court were to make a ruling that your child go to Montessori school, would you be able to get him to Montessori school?
Yes.
Okay. There was some testimony about some things that happened in 2022. And I want to take you back there and give your explanation of the version of what happened. Let's specifically start with the October, I believe it was the October 12th date that, I'm sorry, October 15th date regarding the soccer game. Can you
Um,
explain what happened that day?
he had a soccer game and I switched a shift with a friend so that I could go. I got to the field and I didn't see either Alicia or Porter. I didn't see Demetrius on the field. So I asked the coach and she was like, I don't know, I think he's sick.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
What the?
Okay.
You can't talk about what he said.
I asked the coach, and then when I still did not know where he was, I called Porter multiple times. I called Alicia once, just the once. I probably could have called her more than once. And then I called my mom. I got no answer from my mom, and I started to panic. And
Now, ultimately, do you agree that that situation could have been handled better by you?
I definitely could have handled it better. After talking to my therapist extensively about it, I realized that it was a trauma trigger and I should have taken a couple deep breaths and gone about it a different way.
Ultimately, you did discover that Demetrius was okay, correct?
Yes.
The incident back on October 17th, 2022, and you were renting a hotel room the middle of that week. What was going on?
My house had fleas and I was getting it bombed. And so I got a hotel for the time being until it was done. And I asked Porter to drop him off there. He did ask why, but at the time, me and him had been having a couple issues, and I felt like explaining it was going to get me another like belittling, if that makes sense. Like everything I did was wrong at that time.
When you mentioned belittling, was that customary?
It happened more often than not. I don't know if it was on purpose, but it was like a lot of times it seemed as though he was going out of his way to try to make me feel small.
And how would he do that? Or what would he say or do?
There were times where I'm trying to think, for example, we got into it about something small like clothes, and it was always that like, oh, well, you just need so much help. That's right. You need my money because you don't have enough. That's right. You can't do this on your own. And it felt like, I don't know, it felt like an attack. It wasn't in those exact words. That's how it felt, I will say.
And did you react to that?
I did. A lot of times it's anger. I tend to, or tended, because it has been like that since therapy, but I tended to get defensive.
Has Mr. Ward ever been aggressive, physically aggressive to you?
Yes.
Explain what happened when he was physically
I was
aggressive.
going to say objection as to time frame and relevance, as far as the time frame relevance.
Okay, maybe clarify that, Ms. Ives, as to what time we're talking about.
Since Demetrius has been born and since the separation, has there been times where Mr. Ward has been physically aggressive to you?
There was one time after Demetrius was born that I feel he was physically aggressive. Me and Juricia were living there at the time. It was actually, I think it was the day that we split, either the day or the day before, because we left in that same time frame. But he accused us of cheating on him, and he was being very just like aggressive, and I ended up backed into a corner in the hallway with him screaming over top of me until Juricia came in and told him to stop because Demetrius was right there.
Do you feel, for the most part, that you and Mr. Ward can talk civilly to each other?
Most of the time, as long as it's through text message, just because I feel like both of us have a tendency to hear tones that aren't necessarily how the other feels, if that makes sense. So like, a lot of times when he talks to me, I feel like it's aggressive or like it's kind of problematic, like he's being rude about it.
So one of the issues here is joint legal custody. What's your opinion on legal custody?
I feel like it should be joint, just because if we're being honest, as adults, we should be able to make decisions together on our child. And yeah.
There was some, I forgot, we were going through some dates here. There was some things brought up about like haircuts. I mean, what is your position on Demetrius's haircuts?
I'm perfectly fine with Porter getting his haircut. The only time that I've had an issue and I've said something is when he goes too long without a haircut. So again, I say he does very well on schedules. Demetrius is a scheduled child in my home anyways. So like 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, I feel he should get his haircut. And if it goes too long and he starts complaining about it, then I'll say something. But that hasn't been said in a while.
And that's something that Demetrius usually does with his dad, correct?
Yes, except for a couple of times. I think I've taken him twice to get his haircut.
Going back to this time in Christmas of 2022, do you recall being denying parenting time over the holiday?
I don't recall denying that parenting time. It could have happened that way. I go to my parents for the holidays. They do live in Detroit.
Was there any there was no court orders from anywhere though?
Oh, no, there was no court orders at that time.
So you and Mr. Warren were kind of left to your own devices to try to come up with a plan?
Yes.
Were you trying to follow any particular schedule regarding holidays, that is?
In 2022, I honestly do not recall. I think we were kind of just going with what we could. We had started trying to figure it out, but I can't think of anything that was specifically set in place.
I mean, you guys never pulled up Calhoun County parenting time schedule ever, did you? And say, hey, let's do this, or?
He did, but I honestly cannot remember if that was that Christmas or if that was after January. We were having a lot of issues at that time when it came to all of the holidays together.
I'm gonna take one moment, Your Honor. Ms. Newbern, can you, I mean, the court's gonna make some decisions today. Can you just tell the court what you think is in Demetrius' best interest regarding a division of custody and parenting time that you would like to see the court implement?
I think it would be best for him to stick to something similar to what we have now, for parenting time, though I would greatly appreciate it if we could come to some kind of understanding or some type of like, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but some schedule in which I get at least one weekend out of the month and Porter gets a little bit more days during the week. Like we can switch some days off or something just so that he has time to do other things with me. Or like an earlier Sunday pickup so that again, we have more time to do other things than our schoolwork and the couple of Legos things that we do now.
What time have you been exchanging Demetrius on Sundays?
On Sundays, he usually gets dropped off around 5:45, 6 o'clock.
Okay, what time would you like to see that happen?
If we could do like a 1 o'clock drop off, it would be 10 times better. We'd be able to catch a movie, go to a couple different places.
All right, and then you typically have Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night as it is currently, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you guys are alternating the Wednesday night.
Yes, ma'am.
And then as far as the schooling, I mean, ultimately, what would you like to see the court order for school?
Ultimately, I would like him to stay within Battle Creek Public Schools. Again, preferably at Fremont, though I'm great with Dudley.
We never touched base on child support. I mean, have you been actively seeking child support? Do you think the court should order it?
I'm not actively seeking child support, no, as long as we're both, doing our part, then I feel like we should be fine.
Is there state assistance? Are you on any state assistance?
I did just refill out my DHS information just for insurance purposes, as well as a little bit of assistance with insurance, like car insurance and things like that.
Okay, is there anything else that you think I failed to mention or that you want to clarify for the court?
Just that I truly do think it is in Demetrius's best interest to be with both of his parents and to have time to do other things with both of his parents as well as his grandparents.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn it over to Ms. Storm, a couple things, Ms. Newbern, is you said that one of the benefits of keeping Demetrius at Dudley was that he had friends there, yet you're attempting to enroll him in Fremont, so that's going to change that, isn't it?
It would, slightly. He's only got the one friend that is also trying to get into Fremont.
And for purposes of support issue, what income do you make from the various employers?
About 17,000 altogether yearly. Well, a little bit over 17,000.
What's a little bit over?
I think this year's taxes were 17,700 and change, but I would have to.
I think that was your net, maybe tell the court what you earned per
Oh,
hour.
per hour.
at
Sorry.
your job.
I earn $17 an hour at the Dude and then $10 an hour at Vegas. And I do only work the 2 days at Vegas.
And you're not paid, from what you said, you're applying for Medicaid, so you're not paying for any insurance, is that correct?
That is correct. I would also like to say I just went up to 17 within the last 3 months. I was at 1550. I want to say before that.
Okay. Do you have any other deductions or that from your income?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, Ms. Storm, any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. I have quite a bit that I need to cover with Ms. Newbern at this point, so I'm not going to be able to finish in the 15 to 20 minutes that we have left before we start getting kicked out of the various courtrooms. So I don't know if at this time whether it would be worth it to start. I did have a few questions regarding income that I could start with if the court would like me to do that.
Now, let's wait, and we can do it all when we're back next Wednesday. We had talked to Ms. Ives, and she was not available on any time on Tuesday. So, and I know Storm, you were not available in the morning on Tuesday, so we'll just continue on next Wednesday, our scheduled time, and then any of the time after that as well.
That works, Your Honor. I know it would have been a challenge for me to make that happen, so that's all right.
Okay, what we'll do is we will recess and take an adjournment at this point. We'll see you back next Wednesday at 1:30.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a good day, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you.
close the record.